Nobody expected what happened next. The journalist's words cut through the air like a knife, drawing gasps from the audience. But as every eye turned toward Barron Trump, expecting him to crumble under the pressure, what he said next would leave the entire room speechless. The ballroom of the Grand Lexington Hotel shimmered beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers, casting warm light over the gathered crowd of politicians, celebrities, and media figures. The annual Liberty Foundation Gala was known for its air of prestige, but tonight, the air crackled with something more: anticipation. Seated near the back of the room, Barron Trump adjusted the cuff of his tailored navy suit, his tall frame allowing him to see over most of the attendees. At 18, he carried himself with a poise that often made people forget his age, though tonight a faint tension lined his jaw. He hadn't wanted to come to this event, a social labyrinth of forced smiles and carefully worded conversations. But his presence had been requested, and duty was something he understood well. The clink of glasses and hum of conversation faded as the evening's keynote speaker stepped up to the podium. The journalist, Daniel Harper, was known for his sharp wit and unfiltered commentary, a figure both revered and reviled in equal measure. Dressed in a sleek black tuxedo, Harper scanned the crowd with a smile that promised both charm and controversy. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth and confident. "It's an honor to speak at this year's Liberty Foundation Gala, a night dedicated to celebrating free speech, open dialogue, and, of course, the generous pockets that keep those dialogues flowing." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, though a few exchanged wary glances. Harper was known for pushing boundaries, and tonight, it seemed, would be no different. "Now, I know we're supposed to keep things light, but where's the fun in that?" Harper continued, his smile sharpening. "After all, we live in interesting times. Political dynasties, social media influencers, and let's not forget the offspring of the powerful, some of whom are here with us tonight." Barron's shoulders stiffened slightly as Harper's gaze flicked in his direction. The air seemed to thin as the journalist paused, clearly savoring the moment. "Ah, yes," Harper said, his smile widening. "Barron Trump, young, tall, and, if the tabloids are to be believed, born with a platinum spoon firmly in hand. It must be quite the challenge, growing up in a golden tower with your name plastered on half the buildings in New York." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Barron's expression remained unreadable, though his fingers tightened slightly against the tablecloth. "Tell me, Barron," Harper continued, eyes gleaming with thinly veiled amusement, "what's it like knowing that no matter what you do, people will always assume you got there because of your last name? Must be tough carrying all that privilege around. Or do they give you a monogrammed luggage set for that?" This time the laughter was louder, though mixed with uneasy glances. Across the room, a few guests shifted in their seats, sensing the line between humor and insult beginning to blur. Barron's jaw clenched, but he held his gaze steady, refusing to look away. "And of course," Harper added, "we can't forget the expectations. Always compared to your father, the man who made headlines faster than most people make coffee. Must be exhausting trying to prove you're more than just the next spoiled brat of American politics." The words hit the air like a slap. The laughter stopped. A few guests exchanged startled glances, unsure whether to look at Harper or Barron. The tension was palpable now, thick enough to feel in the space between heartbeats. For a moment, silence reigned. Then slowly, Barron pushed back his chair and rose to his feet. The faint scrape of the chair legs against the polished marble floor seemed unnaturally loud in the hushed room. All eyes turned to him as he adjusted the cuff of his jacket with deliberate care, his posture straight and unflinching. Stepping away from the table, he moved toward the stage with measured strides, his polished shoes clicking softly against the floor. Harper's smirk faltered slightly as Barron approached the podium, but he quickly recovered, tilting his head with a look of amused curiosity. "Well, this is unexpected," Harper quipped. "Come to give me a lesson in humility, young Trump?" Barron stopped a few feet from the podium, his gaze steady as he met Harper's eyes. When he spoke, his voice was calm, clear and steady, carrying through the room with the ease of someone who had learned to command attention without raising his voice. "You seem to know a lot about me, Mr. Harper," he began, each word deliberate. At least you think you do, but let me clarify a few things. Since you're so interested, a ripple of anticipation swept through the crowd as Barron took a step closer. Yes, I grew up with privileges most people can't imagine, he continued. I won't deny that. But privilege doesn't define character. Choices do. And I've learned that the world doesn't care about your last name as much as it cares about what you do with the opportunities you're given. Harper opened his mouth, but Barron raised a hand, silencing him with a look that held more authority than anyone expected from someone his age. You called me a spoiled brat, Barron said, his voice gaining a slight edge. But tell me, what's more spoiled, being born into privilege or standing behind a microphone, tearing people down to get a laugh? A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harper's smile faded slightly, his fingers tightening around the edge of the podium. I didn't choose my last name, Barron continued, his gaze unwavering, but I choose how I respond when people try to use it against me. I choose to prove that I'm more than what the tabloids say, and I choose to stand here tonight not to defend my family's name, but to remind everyone that respect isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn. Silence gripped the room. Harper shifted his weight, but for once, words seemed to escape him. Barron stepped back slightly, his posture unyielding. So if you want to judge me, Mr. Harper, judge me for what I do, not for where I come from. And if calling me names makes you feel bigger, then by all means, keep going. But don't be surprised when the world remembers me for what I accomplish, and remembers you for the jokes you used to tear others down. The final words hung in the air like the final note of a symphony, clear, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Barron turned, his steps measured and unhurried, as he walked back to his seat. The room remained silent, as if waiting for permission to breathe. Harper stood frozen at the podium, his usual quick wit failing him as the weight of the moment settled on his shoulders. Then, as if breaking a spell, applause erupted from somewhere near the back of the room. The sound spread quickly, building into a standing ovation that filled the air with a thunderous clap of hands and the murmur of voices rising in approval. Harper stepped back from the podium, his smile strained as he attempted to mask his discomfort. But the damage was done, and the power in the room had shifted irrevocably. As Barron settled back into his seat, he allowed himself a faint smile, not of arrogance, but of quiet satisfaction, because tonight he hadn't just defended his name, he had redefined it. The applause echoed through the grand ballroom, reverberating off marble walls and crystal chandeliers. Yet amid the clapping hands and murmurs of approval, the tension between Barron Trump and Daniel Harper remained thick, like the charged air before a storm. Harper stood frozen at the podium, his confident smirk now replaced with a strained tightness around his mouth. Slowly the applause began to fade, replaced by the soft clinking of glasses and whispered conversations as guests exchanged glances, uncertain of what would happen next. Barron sat back in his chair, his gaze steady but calm, as if the confrontation had taken nothing from him, but everyone could see it had taken something from Harper. His usual air of untouchable arrogance now seemed slightly frayed at the edges. Clearing his throat, Harper adjusted his bow tie and leaned forward, gripping the sides of the podium a little too tightly. Well, I have to admit, he said, forcing a chuckle that didn't quite reach his eyes, I wasn't expecting such a passionate speech. Maybe we should add aspiring politician to your resume, young Trump. A few scattered laughs rippled through the room, but they were nervous, uncertain. Harper's attempt to regain control of the moment was falling flat. Without rising from his seat, Barron replied, his voice clear and steady. There's a difference between passion and dignity, Mr. Harper. One fades when the applause ends. The other stays with you when no one's watching. The room fell silent again. Harper's jaw tightened. That's quite the philosophy, Harper shot back, his tone sharpening. But tell me, does that dignity come with a trust fund and a private jet? Because it's easy to talk about character when you've never had to wonder where your next meal is coming from. Barron's eyes narrowed slightly, but his expression remained composed. I never said my challenges were the same as everyone else's, he replied, but privilege doesn't erase pain, and wealth doesn't buy wisdom. Character comes from how you treat people, especially those who have nothing to offer you. The air in the room seemed to tighten as Harper took a step back from the microphone, his smirk faltering once more. It was clear he hadn't expected Barron to hold his ground so firmly, or to speak with such conviction. And maybe that's the difference between us, Barron continued. You use your platform to tear people down. I plan to use mine to lift people up. A murmur of approval swept through the crowd, low but unmistakable. Harper's fingers clenched the edge of the podium as if holding on to the last fragments of control. Well, he said, his voice a touch sharper now, I suppose time will tell whether you live up to those lofty words, or if you're just another rich kid trying to play the hero. Barron stood slowly, his height giving him a natural advantage as he met Harper's gaze without flinching. Maybe, he said quietly, but I'd rather try and fail than spend my life tearing others down just to feel important. The words landed with a weight that seemed to press down on the entire room. Harper's smile vanished entirely, replaced by a flicker of something unreadable. Pride, perhaps, buried beneath layers of ego and self-defense. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Barron turned, adjusting the cuff of his suit as he stepped away from his table and moved toward the exit. Heads turned to watch him, whispers following in his wake as conversations began to stir back to life. As he reached the door, Barron paused, glancing back over his shoulder one last time. His gaze found Harper's, and though no words were spoken, the message was clear. This isn't the last time you'll hear from me. Then he was gone, leaving behind a room full of people who would talk about this night for years to come. And as Harper stood at the podium, staring after the young man who had just dismantled him with nothing more than calm words and unshakable confidence, he couldn't shake the feeling that, for the first time in his career, he had lost. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire and challenge us to grow. What would you have done if you were in his shoes? Let us know in the comments below.